Hey everybody, Dr. Phil here. So this is going to be let me just start this up, get this where I want to go. Video on ethics, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability. So let's go ahead and jump on it. So let's talk firstly just a little bit about ethics. I think everybody knows what ethics is, but in the context of this sort of international business aspect. So ethics is an accepted principles of right or wrong that govern the conduct of a person, members of a profession, or actions of an organization. Business ethics is accepted principles of right or wrong governing conduct of business people. An ethical strategy is a strategy or course of action that does not violate these accepted principles. And of course, an ethical dilemma, which we will all find ourselves in at some point if we haven't already in life, is a situation in which no course of action is absolutely acceptable from an ethical or moral perspective. So with regard to employment practices, what practices should be used when work conditions are inferior in a host nation? For human rights. What's the responsibility of a foreign multinational when operating in a country where basic human rights are not respected? So, for example, South Africa and apartheid, and the Sullivan Principles adopted by GM, General Motors. Is it ethical for multinational corporations to do business in repressive countries? And of course, many oppressive regimes still exist around the world. With respect to environmental pollution, another ethical area, should a multinational feel free to pollute in a developing nation if doing so does not violate laws? Tragedy of the commons occurs when a resource held in common by all, but owned by no one, is overused by individuals, resulting in its degradation. People, and we see an example here of people wearing masks at Tiananmen Square in China's capital city of Beijing. With regard to corruption, is it ethical to make payments to government officials to secure business? This, of course, deals with what we call the FCPA, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. And there's also the Convention on Combating Bribery of Foreign Public Officials in International Business Transactions. Facilitating payments, or what we call speed money, is excluded. Some argue paying bribes might be the price of doing the greater good. Others, however, argue that corruption reduces returns on business investment and leads to low economic growth. Many multinationals have now adopted a zero-tolerance policy. Ethical dilemmas are sort of broadly and academically defined as situations in which no available alternative seems ethically acceptable. They exist because real-world decisions are complex, difficult to frame, and involve various consequences that are difficult to quantify. No universal worldwide agreement about what constitutes accepted ethical principles, and of course cultural principles and perspectives can vary considerably. International managers often face situations where an appropriate course of action is just simply not clear. So here we see some of the roots of and the determinants indeed of unethical and the determinants of ethical behavior, depending on how you look at it. Obviously personal ethics, the decision-making processes, organizational culture, unrealistic performance goals, leadership, and of course societal culture. With regard to personal ethics, business ethics reflect personal ethics very often. Expatriate managers may face pressure to violate personal ethics. They're away from the ordinary social context and supporting culture, and psychologically and geographically distant from the parent company. With respect to decision-making processes, business people may behave unethically because they fail to ask relevant questions. The decisions do not incorporate ethical considerations into business decision-making. With regard to organizational culture, unethical behavior may exist in firms with an organizational culture that does not emphasize business ethics, and the values and norms shape the culture of a firm, and that culture influences, of course, decision-making. And with regard to unrealistic performance goals, pressure from parent company to meet goals that are unrealistic and can only be attained by acting in an unethical manner. With regard to leadership, leaders establish the culture of the organization and set the example, in the sense that actions speak louder than words. We sometimes call that the tone at the top. With respect to societal culture, ethical policies differ by country. The MNEs, again that's multinational enterprises, MNEs located in countries with strong individualism and uncertainty avoidance are more likely to emphasize ethical behavior. However, MNEs located in countries with high masculinity and high power distance are less likely to promote ethical behavior. Let's talk about the straw men. So the Friedman Doctrine states that the social responsibility of business is to increase profits so long as the company stays within the rules of law. Companies should do only what is mandated by law and what is required to run a business efficiently. Cultural relativism says that ethics are culturally determined and firms should adopt ethics of the cultures in which they operate. For example, you've probably heard the old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Somewhat universal ideas of morality are indeed found across cultures. From the standpoint of a righteous moralist, M&E's home country standards of ethics are appropriate for companies to follow in foreign countries. They're common amongst managers from developed nations, and critics say it's not always appropriate to adopt home country standards. We also have what we call the naive immoralist. If a manager of an M&E sees firms from other nations not following ethical norms in the host nation, that manager should not either. Actions are ethically justified if everyone else is doing the same thing. That's not a statement, that's just sort of the ideology, if you will. With regard to utilitarian and Kantian ethics, the utilitarian approach to ethics, the moral worth of actions or practices is determined by their consequences. Actions have multiple consequences, some good, some not. Actions are desirable that produce greatest good for the greatest number of people. In Kantian ethics, Immanuel Kant argued that people should be treated as ends and never purely as means to the end of others. People have dignity and need to be respected. Ultimately, they are not machines. With regard to rights theories, human beings have fundamental rights and privileges that transcend national boundaries and culture. Human rights form the basis of a moral compass that managers should navigate by when making decisions that have an ethical component. The idea that some fundamental rights transcend national borders and cultures was the underlying motivation for the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Certain people or institutions are obligated to provide benefits or services that secure the rights of others. So let's zoom in now, let's focus a little more on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Number one, everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and to protection against unemployment. Number two, everyone without any discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work. Number three, everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. And then four, everyone has the right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of his or her interests. And then justice theories, focus on the attainment of just distribution, one that is considered fair and equitable, of economic goods and services. John Rawls' position on this was all economic goods and services should be distributed equally, except when unequal distribution would work to everyone's advantage. Impartiality is guaranteed by what we call the veil of ignorance, in that everyone is imagined to be ignorant of all their particular characteristics. So, examples of that would be, race, sex, intelligence, etc. The difference principle states that inequalities are justified if they benefit the least advantaged person. Alright, thanks for watching this quick video, and I will see you all in a future video. Take care.